Hi, I'm Anya, and I'm answering Young Money questions. And the question I'm going to talk about today is budgeting and spending tips. Do I have any tips on how to lower the cost of living, the cost of rent, utilities, food, all the other stuff we have to pay for? And what do I do with my budgeting? So the first and most important thing I have to say about budgeting is pay yourself first. Okay? You don't have to be a wizard. You don't have to track every single cent, although it can be helpful for some people. But the most important thing, I don't like to sweat the small details when it comes to budgeting. I like to look at the top line things and make sure that I'm in the right place. So I pay myself first. What does that mean? That means that you have a goal of saving. Saving means simply that you're spending less than you're earning. And in order to ensure that, to really reinforce that on yourself and force some accountability, I would say put up an automatic small transfer every month from your checking account into your savings account. And this can be really, really tiny to start out. I mean, if you can be 50 cents, if you have 50 cents. You can set up a recurring transfer of 50 cents a week. But the point of that is you're automatically forcing yourself to save out of your checking account. And that means that you're automatically spending less than you make. And that is the goal for financial security. So beyond that, what do I do? So I have a recurring monthly transfer, and this is actually really, really helpful for me recently because I noticed that my checking account was going down more quickly than I had realized, and I had that savings to fall back on, and so I realized that I had to rein in my spending as well. So how did I do that? Well, there are these major categories of rent, utilities, food, entertainment that we all have, and I want to tackle them one at a time. Rent. What do you do to keep down your living expenses? This is the most important decision that you have to make as a young person starting out, because there's a paradox here, right? I mean, your living expenses are very intimately tied to the city that you're living in, which is very tied to the opportunities that are around you. So a lot of people have this issue where they're moving back in with mom and dad, but that means a longer commute, or it changes the radius in which they're looking for jobs. So what I would say is, first and foremost, it's okay to stretch a little bit for the purpose of being in a city or a place with more opportunities in your area. Young people, ideally, you're spending a quarter of your income or less on rent. If you're spending between a third, more like a third of your income on rent, you're considered to be stressed. If you're spending up to a half, you're really in over your head. That's unaffordable housing. So, ideally you're spending a quarter of every dollar you make on your rent, or less, obviously. If you can't quite make it there, especially if you're first starting out the first couple of years out of school, I would say don't sweat it right away. You've got to try to make a go of it in the city that has the opportunities, because that's how the job market works these days. Now that said, there definitely are times, especially if you're self-employed or you're a remote employee, you're able to work from home, that it does make sense. If you don't have enough money coming in, it does make sense to move back in with mom and dad and save money on rent that way. Other ways to save on rent. Obviously roommates, right? You got to figure out, how to share a space and ideally be creative about that. I've heard of people, sharing loft beds if they're really, really close to someone, or putting up an extra wall in their apartment. People will do almost anything it takes, right? If you're thinking about living in an urban area, if you think about bicycling, a lot of people feel limited by their commute times or their space to public transportation. Or obviously the cost of commuting with a car. If you do have a bicycle and you use it every day, it's going to give you much more freedom in terms of where you can actually live and where you can work. So I would consider that, and obviously it's free as well. And it's the cost of the bike lock, much, much cheaper than any other form of transportation, saves you money on a gym membership. So look into getting a bike as a means of limiting your housing costs as well, because it's going to allow you to live in a different neighborhood, possibly farther from public transit, or maybe farther away from your job. Other ways of saving money out of your living expenses, out of your utilities. Lots and lots of young people already know this, they're already doing it, but cancel your cable, right? Cancel your cable, your television. You don't need to be paying $150 a month for HBO. Everybody knows there's other ways to get the videos or the movies that you want to watch online. Plus, it's better for you to be out anyway with your friends, right? Television is really not the most renewing way to appreciate your life or to experience things. You know, everybody has it, everybody loves it. My husband and I got rid of our TV 7 years ago. We haven't really looked back. We watch videos online. There's Hulu, there's Netflix, you know, once in a while, but it eliminates a lot of that aimless channels flipping, which I think gives us all more energy, improves our life at home. So get rid of your cable bill. Think about sharing your internet. You know, can you share internet with your neighbors? Can you share internet with your roommates? If you have, you know, high-speed internet is a necessity for a lot of people today, especially for their jobs. But for some people, they eliminate internet at home if they have access to it at work, so that can work as well. So those are ways to limit your cost of utilities. Look at your phone bill. Are you able to drive down any unlimited usage that you're paying for, or you know, combine it between the work and the home? Can you put your phone on Wi-Fi when you're at home so you use less data and get on a minimal plan? So these are ways to kind of limit your cell phone bill, which is a major utility expense for a lot of people as well. If you haven't done this already, think about getting rid of your landline and just relying on the cell phone alone. Or, of course, you can go completely old school and just get a non-smartphone or a pay-as-you-go phone, like a Boost Mobile phone that you are really putting the minimum expenses on it, and then you're going to get your data somewhere else from Wi-Fi or maybe something at work. So ways to spend money on food. So we talked about rent, we talked about utilities. The biggest, most underutilized way to spend money, to save your money on food, is to eat out less often. The average American spends about $5,500 a year on food. $2,600 of it goes to food outside the home, in restaurants, in grocery stores, in restaurants, in cafes. Food outside the home is a huge expense. Obviously, we spend money on lattes and that sort of thing, $5 a day. It really does add up. So, you know, anytime you can commit to just eating one less meal out a week, it's going to put lots of money in your pocket. It really is going to add up. When you cook, you know, think about cooking in season. Think about cooking and, you know, buying produce, cutting back on the amount of processed foods that you buy. Shockingly, excuse me. Think about cutting back on the amount of processed foods and sweets that you buy at the grocery store. Shockingly, the largest single category of our spending on groceries, more than one out of $5 goes toward processed foods, fat, oils, and sweets. These are foods that no one needs to eat, right? So, you know, the risk of sounding like your mom for a second, I'm just going to say that if you can cut some of those processed foods out of your life, replace them with whole foods, they're going to be more satisfying, they're going to be healthier, and you're going to save money as well. So that's really a win-win. So eating out a little bit less, buying less processed foods, less sweets, obviously trying to cook a little bit more is a great way to save money on food. You know, I'm really into cooking. I've been cooking for many years. I know it can be daunting when you're just starting out. You know, come up with a couple of recipes, a couple of mainstays. Think about getting together, cooking with friends, cooking on a Sunday, a big batch of something and freezing it to eat for lunch throughout the week. You know, bringing your lunch to work is a really great way to save a little bit of money there. So, you know, to recap, rent, the way you save money on rent, you really have to look at the big picture of your living expenses, the city that you're living in. I'm not against spending a little bit more money to live in a place with more opportunities. But at the same time, you know, you want to make sure you have as many roommates as you can. Think about getting a bicycle so you can move into a more marginal neighborhood that's a little bit less expensive. Think about saving money on utilities by eliminating either your cable subscription or your phone data subscription, or consolidating it, sharing internet with someone else, getting rid of your television, and save money on food by eating out less often, cooking more, and buying fewer processed foods and sweets. And that's about it.